Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Thank you to the Northwest Arkansas Land Trust for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Conservation organizations play an important role in supporting local farms and food efforts nationwide. In the heart of the Ozarks, this land trust is taking land access for farmers one step further where they're offering affordable land leases. You can learn more about the program and the farm location by contacting 479-966-4666. Information is online at www.nwafarmlink.org. That is nwafarmlink.org. Hey, Thriving Farmers. Michael Kilpatrick here with another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And today my guests are Tim and Sophia Eng, who are both first-generation Asian American farmers who left their Silicon Valley careers to start a 5-acre micro farm in Northeast Tennessee. Tim is a homestead-focused realtor, and Sophie is the author of the Nourishing Asian Kitchencookbook. Tim and Sophie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Michael.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So we actually recently met at the Farm Where You Live conference, and we actually had some fun times hanging out, chatting about the cookbook, chatting about what you guys are doing. But why don't you give our audience a little bit of your journey?
So we started, 12 years ago, really on this journey, looking through food and realizing when our oldest daughter was born that what we were feeding her, even though we were hand making our food at home, not everything was clean. So it's been a journey. We started cleaning up our Asian sauces, started making things from scratch down to our sriracha, which, by the way, shout out, we love your fire cider sriracha.
Thank you.
But, things like that. And so it's just been a long journey for us, fast forward to 2020 when the pandemic hit. That's when we said, hey, our garden's just not enough. We're going to have to bring in some protein. And we expanded to 5 acres in California, and then ultimately realized actually that we needed a strong community around us. And that's why the move to Tennessee.
Yeah, we have no farming background whatsoever. We grew up in the city. We're from San Jose, California originally. We went to Polyface and learned from Joel on how to harvest chickens and as well as rabbits. And we felt really empowered that we could do it. And at that time, and when 2020 happened, we realized that our food system was broken and that we needed to take control and be able to, raise real organic foods and to grow our own food.
Yeah. So I'd followed Nourishing Traditions, if you're familiar with that big nutrition from Sally Fallon. So it's been 12 years since we found that book, and it really changed our lives. And that's what the person who gave it to us actually said this changed her life. And same thing as well. And while we were going through it and trying to get my parents to eat more of the Nourishing Traditions recipes, it was missing that umami flavoring that they're so used to with our Asian cuisine. So it's been, a lot of years in the kitchen with my mom, revising some of these recipes, our Asian recipes, and some of the, concepts and principles of Dr. Weston A. Price, to now come together with this book called The Nourishing Asian Kitchen that I've worked very closely with my mom.
Very cool. All right. So that must have been cool to be able to work with her as you kind of discovered this. Talk a little bit about so what is Asian food known for and what are the bad things in it? I know one of the big ones is MSG typically.
Yeah. MSG is the number one culprit to why we can't eat out anymore. And it's been a long time. My mom, when we were eating out, we didn't even realize it was MSG before all of this, but she had heart palpitations, eventually then led to atrial fibrillation. And because of all of that, it made me realize, hey, why don't we just start cutting things? I was already doing it with making our own baby food. And then it just really rapidly went to, I'm just going to clean up everything out of our pantry. And one day I grabbed one of those big black garbage bags and one by one opened the refrigerator door and just went through all of the condiments.
Wow.
And she came running out saying, what are we going to cook with? And I told her, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. And it's just been replacing one recipe one by one. And, now we're at the point where we're out here in the middle of nowhere, and we really don't have to be dependent on any of these condiments anymore. We're making it all ourselves.
Absolutely. So talk about, what are some of your favorite recipes that are in the cookbook?
My favorite recipe is the oxtail pho, which is, the one of the most nourishing things, parts of the animal. There's only one oxtail per cow. And in our culture, my mom would say that's where the strength of the cow is actually found. And also where the cow balances itself is with the tail. So we simmer that in a 24-hour bone broth. We have our own organic pho spices that we, package up ourselves, and we also sell those separately. But really, honestly, that's my favorite recipe. I have it on the stove going. It's between that and the chicken pho, but we always have some sort of broth going on the stove, and it's great for our busy lives because there's always food. That's nourishing.
And the spices and simmering for several hours is what creates the umami flavor. So you don't have to
Right.
MSG.
Correct. Thank you.
So yeah, part of this is time. It's not, it's not fast food. You're going to be, obviously eating it's fast because everyone's enjoying it, but that aspect of, cooking those dishes, there is some time involved in making sure that you got all the different steps.
Correct. But really, I was just, we had some friends over, they stayed with us, and I showed them, we actually did some recordings, and it really is about 15 minutes of hands-on time from beginning to end. Most of it's just sitting on the stove, and you can go about your day.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah. I know my wife particularly likes those that throw stuff in and just let it go. I'm obviously looking at this Vietnamese affogato. So tell me a little bit about that.
So it's awesome. We have our own dairy cow, so we have an unlimited access to all this cream. So now I've got a recipe in there to make your own ice cream. It's sweetened condensed ice cream as well. But then we also have Vietnamese coffee. If you have you ever had that before?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, it's really, really delicious. And I have that recipe in there too. It's typically like a dark French roast. And mixed in with some sweetened condensed milk, which we also make ourselves. And it really is just pouring the espresso coffee that we make over the ice cream.
That's how I influenced the cookbook. I love coffee and I love ice cream.
Yes. Yeah.
So the only picture with Tim in the cookbook is with a cow.
Okay. Very cool. So then when is the book released?
The book is out December 7th this year.
Okay. And we're in 2023.
2023, yes. But pre-orders are available now. So you can go to Amazon and just, you can punch in the Nourishing Asian Kitchen. And I also have some pre-order bonuses if you order between now and December 1st. So show you how to cut up a chicken the Japanese way. So it's clean. You don't have to pull your blades, and you're left with a carcass that you can then turn into stock.
Very cool. Very cool. So with doing this cookbook, what would you say were your biggest learning experience throughout it was?
I think the biggest learning experience that I had writing this cookbook is realizing that you have to say yes to your dreams. It's something that I have been wanting to do for 12 years. I've thrifted all of the dishes in that cookbook for the last 12 years. And I had been putting it off, year after year because I worked full time.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to put the recipes together for the kids. And last year, my dad was having health issues, and Tim said, and I told him, I said, I got to take some time off. Give me 3 months from September to December. And then I'll jump right back to getting a job. I just want to take care of Dad. And he said, well, while you're doing that, then why don't you do something with those cardboard boxes full of thrifted dishes, or just go donate them?
Okay.
And, because I said yes to that, I, like literally within the month, Chelsea Green Publishing reached out. I had a book deal, and it wasn't supposed to be anything like this. It was just supposed to be like, go get it printed at FedEx and bound, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we did, by November of last year, I signed the book deal with them. By February, they were so excited. They said, send in the manuscript by February to get it out this year. And typically with a big publishing company, it takes about 2 to 3 years to get a book out.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we got endorsed. Sally Fallon wrote the foreword, which is a huge honor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's endorsed by Joel Salatin, Sean and Beth Doherty, and very respectable people. So I think that was the biggest lesson, was realizing, I've just been storing this all together in my head and not saying yes to myself. You got to say yes to everything else, right? As a mom. And it kind of felt selfish for a while, even while I was writing the book, because I have all these other responsibilities at home, the farm, the kids. And writing a book is not a lucrative thing. You don't make money while you're writing it.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to get the book out. It's been a hard year, but I'm really excited about it. It's been getting pretty good reviews so far.
Yeah. And I think the Nourishing Traditions book was written so many years ago. It was time for just a update, but that's now, I mean, one of our favorite cuisines is Asian. So we're super excited about it. I mean, my wife, I brought her home that card you gave me, and she was super, yeah. So we can't wait for it to come out.
Great. I'm so excited.
Talk us through a little bit about, California to Tennessee. What was that like? And remind me exactly when you made that transition.
It was a really big transition for us. We started off, we've lived most of our lives in California. I was in the military, went to West Point, served in the Army, came back. And in 2019, we started a small garden on our 1/4-acre lot in the Bay Area. And once 2020 happened and we got chickens and we wanted to get some more livestock, we found 5 acres just north of Sacramento. We wanted to stay in California for family and friends. And we actually, had a great homestead. We had two ponds that were spring fed. We had solar powered, as well as a backup generator. We had a well. So we were pretty getting to be self-sufficient, but
we had 100 ducks too. You brought in
100 ducks. Okay.
100 ducks. Yes. In the Asian cuisine, we love ducks.
Yes.
They're also extremely, extremely difficult to harvest because of all the down.
Yeah, they are. I'm well familiar with that. Yes. I feel your pain.
And coming from the city, I started calling up a bunch of hunting clubs, and they just laughed at me and said, well, we just skin the duck and just take the breast. And no, it's all about the skin. It's all about the duck.
It is.
So from there, we did quickly realize that what we were lacking was community. And we started looking around, and we had an RV. We spent a week in Texas, a week in Oklahoma, and we ended up in East Tennessee.
Yeah. So it started in 2022. So I'm a mortgage lender. And I had refinanced, when rates were down to 2% in 2021. So I'd actually refinanced us 3 times and got us down to 2.25. But by January 2022, I had heard that rates were going to rise. And so, as I'm sure the market is manipulated. And
exactly,
so I didn't know how quickly or how bad it was going to be. So I said, hey, I know we just built this homestead, but if we are ever going to think about leaving California, because we didn't have community, we already kind of came to that conclusion already. Then I said, we got to go now. And so we did go on a 2-week trip. We checked out Texas, Oklahoma, and Tennessee, and ultimately found an amazing community here. And by the time we closed in March of so just 2 months after, in 2022, rates had already jumped up a point for us. And now we're 8.5 right now.
So homestead wise, it made logical sense to come out to East Tennessee with the natural, lots of water and the community. But financially, it was really difficult to think about. I mean, yes, the interest rate wise, it made sense to make the move now, but we were crushing it in the Bay Area. We were focused on helping veterans with VA loans because there was no representation out there. And being a veteran myself, I wanted to fight for the underdog. There are it was really competitive, multiple offer situations in the Bay Area. People had cash or they had stock options. And we did a really good job of representing vets. We were winning out. And so it was really difficult to step away from the Bay Area. Now I still service the Bay Area now, but now I'm kind of doing in both Tennessee as well as in California. So financially as well as emotionally, right? We have family and friends in California. So it wasn't very easy to just pull the plug right there and say goodbye. So we are still very much doing both, but we are emphasizing in building up our homestead here in
Right.
Tennessee.
And most, if not all of our business has come from referrals. So it's been people we want to work with.
Yeah.
Which it's been great.
Yeah. And so then let's talk about you're the homestead realtor. So how did you decide you wanted to be that person?
Well, there's no representation in the homestead community. I'm living it, breathing it. I am just at least 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead, and I'm just devouring everything that I can gather, whether it's just reading up on homesteading or attending these conferences or paying money to go to these workshops. We are learning as much as we can. We're trying to move as quickly as possible, just like in the Silicon Valley, where like the startup mentality of just get there faster. We are doing exactly that, but also in that same spirit, I want to be able to share what I'm learning. And in the real estate industry, you're either specializing in land only or residential or commercial properties. There's no representation in terms of finding the right homestead, in terms of combining permaculture, right, design, and looking at the land as well as the home overall, but and also thinking about the family unit, and if they don't have a family, just if an individual wants to homestead or have a partner, what things to look for. And I walk in step with them, and I used a lot of the experiences and skill sets that I gained from the military as well as just in the real estate industry, combining it with what I'm learning right now in homesteading. And I'm able to talk to people because a lot of people who are getting into homesteading, they have never farmed before. And so I'm helping them transition from city or suburban life and making that transition and making a smooth transition into homesteading. So many of my clients are coming from out of state. They're coming from the both West and East Coast, and they're looking for community, and they're looking to homestead.
Very cool. So then with that, is there like criteria that you have for the property? Or obviously you're also trying to give them locations of where would be the best to move, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I look for a lot of its natural resources. You're also looking for usable acreage. Oftentimes people go on Zillow or Realtor and they just look for, well, how much am I paying per acre? And they're just looking at just the dollars, but not taking into consideration, is that land usable? Meaning, is it straight uphill? Is it heavily forested? Because there are dollars that you need to account for in that. Is there natural water? Okay, is there a well? And is the well contaminated? Do you have a backup system? How far away from the road front is it? Because people don't want to have a homestead like right next to the road so people can drive by and see what you're growing.
Absolutely.
And so take all of that under consideration, as well as security. I am security first minded because coming from a military background, I want to not only grow food, but I want to be able to secure it and also keep my family safe.
Absolutely. Very cool. Yeah. Cause people, they see, 500 acres and, it's only $500,000. They're like, oh, this seems like a great deal. And they don't realize that 3/4 of it isn't accessible, or there's absolutely no water, or it's the wrong type of soil. So having that guided person to walk them through, which is probably the biggest purchase they will make for their homestead ever, is so key.
Yes, and oftentimes people try to buy things sight unseen, and I don't recommend that unless you're working with me and unless you've actually done a recon and came out to take a look at the area, because there are way too many stories of people buying things sight unseen. Then they come out and they take a look and like, oh, that's not what I was looking for, or oh, look at the neighbors. Okay, yes, you want unrestricted land, but with that freedom of unrestricted land, your neighbors also have the freedom to put whatever they want on their lot as well. And so you want to be community minded as well and take a look and not just buy a bug out spot. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not a rush purchase, not a fear purchase to just buy some land and hopefully go there when things go down or something like that. You have to be diligent about and do your due diligence and research the area, come out, spend some time in the community. Sophie didn't mention it, but how we interviewed the communities, we actually went to the local coffee shops and just kind of sat there and just met with locals to get the vibe and ask our questions, because these are things that you're not going to learn just looking online on Zillow, for instance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're back with Susan. Susan, let's talk about one of the biggest problems that we see farmers facing today.
Michael, I'm sure you know, it's land access and affordable land access. Housing has changed so much. There's such a desire, for people to experience, maybe having 5 or 10 acres, little piece of heaven on earth. But all of these pressures, along with just, urbanization, is taking away from a lot of those historic small family farms. And our community is experiencing this, and we are just doing all that we can to try to help to curb this, but then also using conservation tools to make that land more affordable for farmers so that they can start farming and to have viable farm businesses. The other piece that is important with our work is that in some of the properties, we will have infrastructure and shared equipment that will really also reduce that barrier to entry so that farmers have less risk and can focus on growing their businesses so that they can be successful and then start to make, some of their own investments and maybe scaling up or other enterprises.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, Susan, for that. And if you are interested in finding out more about what the Northwest Arkansas Land Trust is doing and the affordable land leases they are offering, go check out nwafarmlink.org or contact 479-966-4666. So you've mentioned community a couple times. Talk a little bit about what that means for you and kind of like what you're building there in Tennessee.
Okay, I'll start off, and Sophie,
Sure.
you can fill in where
Yeah.
this thing.
Mhm.
For community wise, we come from the city where everyone has a Ring doorbell, nobody interacts with their neighbor, and if you are knocking on someone's door, it's like, what do you want? And the only time I met my neighbors when I was actually moving out, and they said, we're so sorry to see you go. I'm like, well, I've never even had a conversation with you, and I only see conversations on the app next door with people just complaining.
Yeah.
But when you're living in the community, literally, I remember when we first moved out to the community, to the countryside, and we first apologized to our neighbors with like, if we seem to be rude or anything like that, we apologize. We're from the city, and because there would be kids just coming over to our house and just playing, and I guess we're feeding them dinner, and it was just like, okay, this is cool. I mean, coming from 2020 when everyone was like locked away in their but people would literally come over and borrow a cup of sugar. Neighbors would come over, and here, even we're out in Tennessee, things cost a lot. Every little bit of thing. So whether you have a tractor and you need attachments, you don't need to buy every single attachment. You can borrow from your neighbor, so that way. Whereas in the city, everyone has their own lawnmower and whatnot. So it's being more purposeful and putting dollars to work, because you have to. How do I phrase this? In the countryside, you can't just delegate and just go on the Yelp app and hire out to do work. You have to learn to do things on your own and to be handy. Even like, I'm not even handy. I wasn't handy. I couldn't even put together IKEA furniture without getting so upset. But being out here has forced me to like, okay, I need to learn. And whether it's through YouTube or through my neighbors and through my community, here we go with community, is out here, nobody cares about what your LinkedIn profile looks like or what your job position title is. It's more of what skill sets do you have and what can you provide for the community. And we are going back to tradition. We're going back to where we actually respect our elders and actually listen to our elders. And there are, in these communities, there are a lot of people who are senior, but they have so much wisdom that they want to share as to how to preserve food, for instance.
Okay, so I'll jump in there because that's a good segue. I mean, the definition of community for me is where that part intersects. And being with, there's a lot of elders in our community, which is great because there's not that awkward competition with people around our age. I'm sure you're familiar being in the city or, they really just want help and they want to teach. And I'm here, I want to help and I want to learn. And so it really is just, most of them don't have kids around anymore. Their kids have moved out to the wayside or they're
to the city.
Right. And so they're by themselves. They're, we're talking close to 70-year-olds. And I love them. They've kind of adopted me and I've adopted them. And it's very busy because we are, we find ourselves caretakers as well. And,
Mm.
but we
Yeah.
really enjoy it, and it's giving back. And I love that part of it, where if I'm making an extra pho, or I'm making a beef heart stir fry, and not everybody, a beef heart is pretty big for our family.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'll make some extra and share it with our garden veggies, and it's no big deal.
And case in point, we never intended on owning cows.
True.
We
Yeah.
didn't. We had chickens, and I thought at
Mhm.
most I would have sheep and maybe pigs. But we came out here, and like what Sophie said, we got connected with community and found some elders, and they took us under our wing, and actually we shadowed them for 6 months straight, learning how to take care of dairy cows.
Yeah.
And before we knew it, now we have 3 of our own.
Well, I mean, she taught me how to milk a cow, like intentionally with hand milking, even though she has a perfectly good
Mhm.
milker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was very Mr. Miyagi style of like,
Mhm.
you've got to learn how to feel. You got to make sure you know how to strip it out, because otherwise she might have mastitis, right?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
even just looking at the cow, and Jersey cows. So we have 3 now, but Jersey cows tend to look skinny on the skinnier side.
Yeah.
And so it's just
And
training us to use our eyes, use our hands, use our instincts, because she said, if your cow loses too much weight, and we're all grass fed, we don't use any conventional grains. She said, it's going to cost you a lot more money and resources to get the cow back up.
And she even helped us out when we wanted to purchase a cow, and it was on Facebook Marketplace or on Craigslist. And
Yeah.
it's not like buying a used car. You're like, okay,
No.
what am I looking at here? And so to have that sort of hand holding through it, we're just so grateful for that opportunity. So it's saying yes and being willing, being open to say yes
Yeah.
to opportunities.
There's no blue book for dairy cows.
No.
That's right.
So with that community, then you've got the folks around you. Tell us a little bit about, like, on your farm, what are the different enterprises you got going on?
So right now we have we have a micro dairy. So we sell our milk, we sell yogurt and butter, cream.
We take that as an opportunity to teach our children. So that's their business. They keep the profits of that, but they also put money back towards any
Feed.
sort of alfalfa, supplements, pellets, as well as,
if we need a vet, they'll come in.
Then they'll pay.
I mean, they own 1/8 of a cow, so it's not much, but it is to teach them some responsibility. But it keeps them motivated, and it keeps them learning how to work together, which is really important to us because of 2020, and really focusing on how do we make our children recession proof or pandemic proof, and teaching them to be producers rather than just consumers, the way that we grew up, unfortunately.
Yeah. So with that, then you mentioned your kids too. So I'm assuming that's part of the reason you guys homestead and do all this stuff, is to kind of educate them and train them on that. What kind of are there specific things you wanted to make sure that they learned from this?
Yeah, so that they are the entire reason why we went into homesteading, and they redefine leaving a lasting legacy. When we were in the city, leaving a legacy was creating maybe like a 529 account for them, or just leaving money for them. But since we've been on this journey, we want to teach them to be recession proof. We want them to gain skill sets, invaluable skill sets that they can apply, so that we know that they will be taken care of. And that to us is creating a legacy, a lasting legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make them successful beyond you.
So ideally, I'd love for them to continue working together. I bought a domain when the little one was 6 months old. So joyandjolie.com, that's their names. And, it was a vision of mine to have them make soap and sell it, but actually they're selling their salves. We make all of the things, we use all of the things that we make.
Gotcha.
And so everything is beyond organic, wild crafted if we're not growing it ourselves, or we source everything clean, including the pho spice mixes. So all of that is their business. They're helping to figure out, put together profit and loss statements, starting to negotiate. They're listening to the phone calls. They're with me by my side when I'm, starting partnerships and things like that. So they're seeing it all.
And we're also teaching them how to speak up, how to do a sales pitch to strangers,
yeah.
And so we'll go to these homesteading conferences, we'll be vendors there, and we have them speak up and sell their products.
Yeah. And many people just buy it because the little one is cute. So
Correct. Yes. I have not, ever taken advantage of that in our business. But yeah, no, that's, I think, but again, I think that's part of them learning those interactions too. Them getting trained on, what does good sales look like and that sort of thing. So, yeah, being able to do that. So you do the spices, you do the micro dairy. What else is going on in your lives?
Well, the cookbook is a part that kind of took over my last year, but ironically, it's been an incredible lead qualifier for us for the real estate business.
Oh, interesting. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So as people hear our stories through, as I speak, or Tim does soil demonstrations, or even through podcasts, and people are finding the story very compelling and saying, hey, sounds like you found community. So we want to do what you're doing, and we want to know where you're at and how you found your community. So we are licensed. I'm licensed in 3 states, in California, and Tim as well, California, Tennessee, and North Carolina, because we live on the border of East Tennessee and kind of North Carolina as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's an organic minded community out there in kind of Western North Carolina. And so we just thought it'd be really smart to cover that as well, because we are starting to get a lot of people come in and ask. So it's been a lead qualifier for us, ironically, through social media, and really just identifying what it is that they want and servicing them.
Yeah, we want to be able to inspire others. If we can do it, you can do it too. And be that one-stop shop. So we know what to look for. We'll help you find the right property. And also, I'm also a soil and land consultant, and I'll also show you how to make that transition, how to turn dirt into soil.
Right. And we're currently working on putting together a network of 50, at least to cover 50 states for vetted real estate agents that understand homesteading and what to look for in land. So as people reach out to us in different states, we'll be able to service them in one of 2 ways. You want to talk about it?
Yeah. So I'm either going to be able to refer them to a knowledgeable homesteading agent in the state that they are looking in, or I will do a partnership, because oftentimes people reach out and they want to work directly with me. And I want to be able to have access to maybe a local MLS. And so I will team up with that local agent just to ensure that our clients are taken care of.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, because unfortunately, 99% of real estate agents have no idea about soil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We would love our real estate agent, but she took us to many houses. Like, I'm sorry, but this ain't gonna work.
Yeah. And that's the pain point that we had as well.
Yeah. And we want to make sure it's a really good experience. We're not just shoehorn you into a property just to make the deal work. We want to make sure all of our business is built off of referrals. We want to make sure it's a great experience overall.
And we recognize it is, like you said, Michael, one of the biggest, if not the biggest investment of the family or the person's life. It's not like buying a condo and kind of growing out and taking the equity, moving into a single family. It's not like that, because when you're getting to the point where you're building a farm or a homestead, you're investing time and resources into that soil and building up soil.
Yeah, and the going trend right now is there's a lot of people looking for multi-generational property. Right. So they're not looking only just for themselves, but they're looking for their children who maybe are not there yet, but they will be. And so they're kind of factoring that into their plan and want to make sure there's enough real estate for them to build their homes on this property. So this is not just something that you just buy randomly for a property. Right. You need to do your due diligence, and you need a realtor that's actually going to have your best interests in mind and know what they're looking for.
Yeah, that is something that's very interesting. I mean, my in-laws have kept talking about, they want to move to Costa Rica or Panama and bring us along. And I'm like, sorry guys, we kind of got a lot going on here. That ain't happening. But I get that, because again, if I was going to relocate halfway across the country with 3 kids right now, I would definitely want, someone to go with us. And then, if I was older, in another 20 years and my kids I want them to settle around me. So I see that aspect of that multi-generational. I think that is part of that community aspect. I think as Americans, we're so often conditioned to be very individualistic, and so many other cultures are not that way. So many more other cultures, they're a lot more community minded. And I think there's a lot we can learn from that.
Yeah. I mean, we're a multi-generational family. My parents have lived with us since, they were starting to get older in their 60s, 65. And then, the kids have grown up with grandma and grandpa, and they've learned a lot of these skills that are passed down. And even though I'd worked in tech for 15 years prior to moving out here, there's a lot of things that we can pick and choose from that. Like some of my relatives will make fun of us and say like, oh, Sophie's gone back 100 years. And there's a part of me that says I could go back further if I could.
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
Exactly.
But you're absolutely right, Michael, in terms of certain cultures may gravitate towards that sort of living, but I'm finding Americans as a whole now are trending towards that.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And I would say that it's not trending towards it. I think the American culture is also going back too. Because if you look at land and how land was bought and sold back then, it was large parcels. And then as individual families were moving out into the city, that's when they started selling out parcels. But when you get into these neck of the woods, you see that, a lot of same people with the same last names are on a street, for example.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting, like they're trying to go that community aspect in these, like, I don't know what you call them, mega developments where they've got like the movie theater, the shopping, everything. And then they have apartments above, and you've got, maybe 200, 300, maybe 400 apartments. I mean, there's so many of those I can count on my hand, like 3 or 4 of those communities just within the Dayton, Cincy metro. Obviously there's usually no organic farming with that, and there's no like actual like rural aspect to that, but it is interesting that they are trying to create that community aspect.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And we've come a long way. I used to think those were really awesome, to have your own business downstairs and then go upstairs and go to sleep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Santa Ana has a really good
we've come a long way.
Well, I mean, on one aspect, like the one restaurant, my wife's favorite restaurant is in one of those places. And I mean, if we didn't have the farm, I'd think she would think twice, because like you eat there every day. But I mean, I think there is something to be said for that small town where, the storefront, you have your shop downstairs and then you live above or you live behind. There's that aspect of community I think is really interesting. And I think when you look at, I think the automobile was one of the greatest challenges to that, because we just all of a sudden now we could live out the country and be in the city. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Cool. So what does life hold for you guys next?
Well, the book comes out in December. So between now and then, it's just been the ginormous push to get pre-orders. And then we'll start speaking back up again early next spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to be extremely busy, going to a lot of homesteading conferences, been invited to speak, and just doing a lot of real estate.
We're just excited to be a part of the movement. Joel calls it the homestead tsunami. And we're just excited to be a part of it, to be with others that have now become our community, even though it's been online, and just talking to people like yourselves, right? But seeing that we're not alone, because that's what we were missing out in California, was doing all of this in a vacuum, and then realizing, oh, we didn't even know it was called homesteading back then.
Yeah.
We had to make sure that we were growing our own food.
We wanted to make sure we weren't going crazy. And we're coming from Silicon Valley, where there's an app for everything, and to say that we want to go backwards, but intentionally going backwards so that we can actually eat nourishing foods and know where our food comes from. It has been sort of lonely journey, and to find community, not only our local community, but our homesteading community has been awesome, and it's given us a lot of hope, and it's been great for our children.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast, and can't wait to share this with our audience.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having us on the show.
Thank you. And you can check us out on Instagram and on Facebook with Sprinkle with Soil.
Yes. Okay. And then the website, it's joyandjolie.com.
Yeah, that's to buy the spices. Book and blog. Follow us on our homesteading journey is Sprinkle with Soil.
Yep. And we have our own podcast as well called Call to Farms.
Yes, because your background's military.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And
Awesome.
on the real estate side, we've got.
And on the real estate side, you can check out my services at homesteadingrealtor.com.
Very cool. All right. Thanks
Thank
again.
you so much, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.